And welcome back to this second half of Who Virgin. We've switched up our lineup a little bit. We've lost Mark and Rebecca Frost, but we have gained one Brian Young, Swank Motron from Big Rich Shiny Robot. Thanks for being here, Brian. Introduce yourself.
I'm Brian. Howdy do.
Brian, tell us everywhere else where people can find your stuff.
I write for Big Shiny Robot, obviously, so you can find my stuff there. I write for the official Star Wars website, so I had a column just go live today about the connections between John Ford's The Searchers and Star Wars. And you can find my stuff in Star Wars Insider and on Huffington Post, and I write novels and nonfiction as well. And you can find all that at brianyoungfiction.com.
You should definitely check out Brian's books. They are absolutely amazing. Children's Illustrated History of Presidential Assassination. Just an absolutely wonderful book. Buy it for your kids. This we're going to talk Avengers, but this part of the podcast is brought to us by a very special sponsor. So, hey, nerds, specifically Salt Lake City area nerds, do you like collectibles? Do you want to pick some up for a cheap price and support a good cause? Want to own a toy, a comic book, a poster that was once owned by one of the big shiny robots? Buy some comics from Brian Young, or buy some pogs from the Hello Sweetie gals? Sponsored by Salt Lake Comic Con and Big Shiny Robot. It's the Brian, is this the second or third annual Nerd Swap Meet?
Second. This is the second.
Yeah, Bohemian Brewery at 94 East 7200 South on Sunday, May 31st from 2 to 7 p.m. Hey, that's just 1 month away. Make sure you're there. Admission's free, but you're going to want to enjoy some tasty food and beverages from the Bohemian while you're there. There's going to be bratwursts. I've heard rumors that for $10 you can go on a brewery tour and bring your own stein and sample some of the Bohemian's tasty suds. Is that a correct rumor, Brian?
I know there's brewery tours. I don't know about the charge, but we recorded an episode of the Big Shiny podcast there just the other night, and the beer was delicious and the brewery was delightful. So you'll want to do that at no matter the price.
Beautiful. Just bring some cash, buy some collectibles, buy some food, buy some beverages. May 31st, 2 to 7 p.m., Bohemian Brewery, 94 East, 7200 South, Big Shiny Robots, Collectibles, and you be there. Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. I really liked this movie, but I had some other major reservations about it. I think, Brian, you and I are kind of on the same page about this. Tell me your thoughts.
I was amazed that with as many moving parts as this movie had, that there was a story that made sense. That it was coherent in any way, shape, or form was a minor miracle because of all of the moving parts to it and all of the personalities in it. And that there were genuine character moments, there were genuine moments of emotion, and character arcs was nothing short of stunning for how much they fit into this movie.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that's absolutely true. And I think it's easy when you're telling an Avengers story to get focused on your big three, on your Cap, your Thor, your Iron Man. And this movie did a really good job of, we kind of sidelined Captain America and Thor a little bit. And it seemed like the Iron Man show. And then we got a lot of Hawkeye, a lot of Hulk and Black Widow, and a lot of the Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. And it really worked bringing out those side characters. So I completely agree with you. It was at the expense of two of my more favorite characters, but I think it worked in terms of the story they were trying to tell.
I still as I left the theater, though, I felt a little bit like I did after I left after Phantom Menace, right? Where I couldn't quite put the pieces of what the story was because I'd just seen a whole blast of awesome. That I couldn't comprehend what was going on, and there were things that I'd get about 3/4 of the way through a scene and go, "Wait a second, why are we here again?" Okay, maybe I need to watch this again and figure that out, because it moves so quick and there's so many moving parts to it that they can't stop to re-explain anything for you.
That's really true. It really expects you to keep up with it, and it moves at a breakneck speed worthy of Quicksilver, and in mind bending turns worthy of Scarlet Witch. So I I was a little bit underwhelmed isn't the right term, because I really did like this movie. I thought it was good. In terms of the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, though, it's like maybe not as good as the first Avengers, maybe not as good as Captain America 2, but I really hold those movies in such high esteem for being really groundbreaking for what they were. And it was hard for me to really fit this in there and feel like this was anything more than just kind of moving the big franchise forward and taking all these toys out of the toy box and presenting them in a really fun and dynamic way.
I think it did a little more than that, in that it sets the table for the conflict or tension that might cause civil war. It
Exactly.
sets the table for Disassembled, but it does it in a way that actually, it doesn't do it for the sake of doing that. It does it in a very clear and logical way. Right? So like Tony's arc from start to finish makes perfect sense. Cap's arc from start to finish, although he has less of one, makes perfect sense. Like, they really built on this is the first time we've seen these characters after their phase 2 movies, right? All together and interacting. And they are a different team. They're all different people. And I think that Whedon was able to respect that and tell something new and tell something interesting. And I think like the best part of this movie was James Spader and Ultron.
I want to agree. I mentioned that this kind of ended up being the Tony Stark story, and there's no one who can really keep up with Robert Downey Jr.'s verbal patter other than Robert Downey Jr., except for Ultron. And not only did they do that, Spader delivered the lines perfectly, but it also made sense in terms of the plot and the characters, exactly why Ultron was able to keep up with Iron Man, with Tony Stark. And that made me really happy that it wasn't just, oh, we're creating him a foil, we're creating him the foil, the perfect foil.
Yeah. Well, and that arose from his genesis, and that all made sense. It's a very comic booky movie, and nothing didn't work for me, but there's things that I wish Whedon would have been able to do better. And I think the chief among them, I know Whedon is a student of film, but I really think that the only person who could have juggled the ending better was George Lucas. I don't think, and I'm not saying this as a Star Wars fan, I don't think anybody has set more pieces in motion at the end of a film and had 3 different storylines playing out in intense action sequences better than George Lucas has been able to juggle.
I agree, but I also felt the third act was possibly the strongest. I was There were parts where I was maybe a little bit bored or wasn't following people quite as well in the first 2 acts, and the third act with the team assembled and a big threat, I think really worked. That being said,
But
I did feel like Ultron's kind of end game was a little kind of 70s Bond villainish, and
it was comic booky.
yeah.
So, but I mean, the thing is, though, in that third act, I got the distinct impression, and maybe upon a second viewing, I'll change my mind about this, or maybe you'll agree with me here, but that characters would seem to disappear, and you'd actually miss them and say, no, don't cut on me. I want to see what's going on, what's happening, what you're showing me now. Like, Thor disappears quite a bit. Like, he disappears almost completely, and then Ultron says, like, hey, you're annoying me. Let's fight, you know? And then they fight for like 3 punches, and then we get to see everyone else and everything else going on. And I kind of like didn't care. It was fun, it was exciting to look at, but the stakes, like, what did it matter if Thor and Ultron were fighting? What did it matter? Like, the way George Lucas in let's take Return of the Jedi builds stakes, they're all built on top of each other. And in this, all of their missions seemed separate from each other. Like, okay, everybody's going to die, but let's try to save the people who are here. And that mission can be successful or a failure, and it doesn't affect the mission to stop the kill the Ultron bots and prevent him from getting out. And that doesn't prevent or affect in any way the the island rocketing up into the sky. Like, none of those things were affected by each other except for some of the players involved. Where in Return of the Jedi, you've got the battle for Endor, the shield generator. If they don't do that, the fleet is going to get torn to pieces. And then you've got the inner battle with Luke, who presumably thinks that he can stop all of this by turning himself over to the dark side. Everything's at stake, and they're all stacked upon each other, and they all affect one another. And that just wasn't the case here in Age of Ultron.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there was one sequence in the film where it did feel like there were those kind of consequences and those stakes. It was when they were going after the casket in that kind of end of second act, beginning of third act action sequence through the streets of Seoul. And it was kind of a MacGuffin chase. They were all going after the one thing, and it's like, we have to distract the main Ultron, but he's got a couple of other henchmen we have to fight off too.
But you've also got, though, in that sequence, though, you've also got Tony off being a hacker.
Yep.
So he's off the playing field, and Thor deciding he needs to take a bath.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, you have all these pieces moving around. I just think it's pretty good, but it's not masterful.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think where I'm settling on this is somewhere in the kind of 8 to 10 out of 10 range. Whereas with the original Avengers, I was like 10 out of 10. No, I'll give this 12 out of 10, 15 out of 10 if I can.
Well, and I think that's also what makes this feel a little bit more muted, right? What's different? How are the stakes different in this movie than the other movie? There's a few personal issues that are different, but really it comes down to an other presence is trying to annihilate life on Earth. And we're going to save all these civilians in the city while some of you go and fight the aliens or the robots or whatever. And it's exactly the same thing. They showed it to us in a very different and interesting way, but we've seen it before.
Yeah, I guess,
And I mean, the helicarrier, the way they had to prevent that from going down is the same way they had to prevent or make the rock go down.
Yeah. So this it's hard. I think once we've seen something like the original Avengers to not look at this through that lens and not compare it to those other films, and even a little bit unfavorably, which is too bad. I really like this movie though. There were parts of it that underwhelmed me a little bit. But that being said, I'm right back at the Alamo Drafthouse on Wednesday night, and I'm going to watch all 11 Marvel movies back to back, and I'm going to be there for Age of Ultron, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. And I'll probably see it again over the weekend. So.
I really liked it too. I mean, for my complaints about it, my complaints are like the rational side of my brain, and the 8-year-old side of my brain has no complaints. That we got to see all of those characters interacting with each other on screen. Like, there was so many. I don't want to call them fan service moments because I hate that phrase and I don't think that's what it is, but it gives us a little something extra where Wanda is affecting the disassembled kind of feeling, or when Vision uh swoops Wanda up and you're like, those two, wow, like
Yeah,
um or they put moments together, like every time Thor and Cap like pulled a joint maneuver, like I was just giddy as an idiot.
that was awesome.
um and I mean the opening scene, I mean it starts with a bang, and that opening sequence is thrilling, and like the Hulkbuster stuff is thrilling, and like all of the pieces are thrilling, but it just um there's so many moving parts, it's coherent, and that's almost as much as you can ask for.
Yeah, it was they they tried to put so many of these moving pieces together, and they did in a way that at least kept the internal logic going, and it worked very well in terms of that. So we've we've tread on a couple of things that I think are not really spoilers. I mean, it's stuff that's going on that I don't think really spoils most of the movie, but I want to get into a couple of really, really heavy spoilers and what that entails for the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. So everyone who doesn't want major spoilers, just stop listening right now, and we'll see you next week. Okay, all right, let's go. Uh, Infinity Stones, like we, of course, it's Infinity Stones. That made me incredibly happy, uh, but it also, like when someone first told me, "Oh yeah, Thanos gave Loki the mind gem to go and take over Earth so that he could get a hold of the Tesseract, which is the space gem." I'm like, "That's stupid. He wouldn't give away one Infinity Gem in order to gain another one." Uh, but I guess he did. Um, and but we know the location of 4 of the 6 Infinity Gems so far, I guess, which is, I don't know, good, bad. How do you feel about that?
I was actually surprised to see Infinity Stones in this. I mean, I half expected it because that's the steady drumbeat. I almost thought that watching the trailers, it just didn't seem as though it was going to. It didn't seem as though it could have entered into it, and I thought that that might almost be a good thing because it. I figured they'd keep him away from this movie to distract us from the fact that we aren't getting Thanos yet. Thanos has been a slow and steady tease for years and years and years now. And I almost would have rather skipped, like, I don't know, like, I would have almost rather skipped this movie and gone straight into the Infinity War. But maybe, I mean, they're playing a different game, and I don't know, they're building something bigger, and maybe they just had to be here.
It may be, maybe they said, well, we know where we can pick up the 5th and 6th gem, but so we've got to shoehorn this 4th one in here. I was wondering if it would show up, just because I'd heard that theory that the scepter was the mind gem, and I
I've been
knew
on
that.
board with that from the beginning.
Oh, okay. Well, I never was, because I thought that seemed stupid of Thanos to give away an Infinity Gem in order to try and get another one. But what do I know?
You
I'm not
put
a.
you put money in the pot to take it all.
I guess so. I'm just not the gambler that you are,
Well,
or
I'm
that
not a
Thanos
gambler,
is.
but well, Thanos. Well, I mean, we know it's going to work out for him to a point.
Well, he's gonna somehow get his hands on all of them. Although, uh, I guess the question is how do you then extract that from the head of Vision?
He's
Uh,
going to have to tear his head in half.
yeah. Oh,
Vision's going to die, and it's going to crack Scarlet Witch, who's like already not stable.
oh, that's gonna be cool. Oh, that's gonna be cool and terrible and tragic.
Yeah,
So then I guess the 5th gem is probably with Adam Warlock. Do you think?
I don't know. I mean, we've
I
got
don't know.
Ant-Man coming up. We've got Civil War coming up. Um, What else do we have pre? I mean, we've got everything coming up before the Infinity War, right?
Um, I we've
There's
got Guardians 2, which it seems like they could do another one there. But the reason I thought it might show up is it seemed to me like we were running out of cinematic runway for them to do this. Like, and it seemed like Civil War wouldn't be necessarily like a good place to do Infinity Gems. Um, I
I
knew the
would like
scepter
I
was
said
going to
before
be
I saw this
somewhere.
movie, I thought it was the same thing about Avengers. It wouldn't be a good territory to go into a gem.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe everything's gonna be an Infinity Gem. You get
Yeah.
an Infinity Gem, and you get an Infinity Gem.
Ah,
Everybody gets.
fine, I'll do it myself.
Fine, I'll do it myself. So, did he just bust into Odin's treasure vault and take the Infinity Gauntlet, or
I don't know. I don't know what I mean. Like we were teased that in Thor, but I don't know if they're keeping up with that.
yeah? So that's the real question there. I don't know. Well, the things we'll find out. Oh, I will also get Thor Ragnarok before
Yeah,
then.
and
So
that's going to come up into one.
absolutely. That'll definitely have that one. I like the
Well,
way that they teased that with Thor. As much as they tried to sideline Thor, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all a tease for how
well,
he's going to destroy the world.
and it feels like they really separated him from the group the same way Tony. Like Tony basically ends the movie hanging up the armor and saying, "Eh, Rhodey's taking over."
Yeah, but he did that in Iron Man 3, though, too. I mean, we kind of knew he wasn't doing it because we knew he'd be back, but
But he did that in Iron Man 3 and then through Agents of Shield and Winter Soldier, they sort of implied that he was putting the team together on his own because Shield was gone. So it was like, okay, we're bringing him back for one more thing, and that's where the film opens. Like they're on their last thing. As soon as this is solved, we're done, and they solved that.
yeah. Well, and that's his whole MO the whole time is he wants we need to get out before people get dead, which
Yeah,
is a really nice kind of noble way to do it and a very Tony Stark way of looking at the universe. And one of the ways that I think it's going to split the universe into the Civil War factions, which will be really nice and one of the things I'm really looking forward to. So, uh, well, I that's all I've really got to say about it. Like I said, I'm kind of in the 8 to 10, 8 out of 10 range. Do you have a
I'm in there, 7.5, 8 out of 10.
something like that? All right. Well, we will have a review. One of us, or
Many of
Adam,
us.
or Lucas, or someone, one of us will review it in the next couple of days on Big Shiny Robot, and you can read the whole review there. Uh, but thanks for listening. Thanks, Brian, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Well, I'm the only one who cares, so that's why I'm the only one here.
Yeah. Thanks for bailing on us, Rebecca. You have to go spend your birthday night with your mom.
She just
Nice.
didn't want to talk to me.
and Mark didn't want to be here to get spoiled at all. So good thing because he would have heard spoilers and he would have not been happy. So
I mean, that's the problem with the movie, though, is that there's nothing unexpected in the movie. If you've read any number of comic books over the last 15 years, you know what's going to happen. You know whose origins there are. Like the second, I mean, like the whole Vision stuff, you know how that's going to play out. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, you know how and why pretty quickly they're going to change teams. Like, I mean, and maybe that's why I felt a little bit odd about the movies. You're watching it and you're like, okay, here's the next move. Okay, here's the next move. There's nothing unexpected about it.
yeah, I wonder if I took like my wife and kids to go see this who aren't quite so steeped in it, if they will have a different perspective in it. My wife most certainly will. My kids might not because they've seen they've seen the cartoons and they know a little bit more. But so I don't know. We'll see. But we'll find out and we'll report back here. So thanks again, Brian. thanks to everyone at Big Shiny Robot for hosting the Who Virgin podcast, and especially Tom Winkley for setting up that hosting for us. And join us next week. We'll get into at least 3 or 4 more episodes of David Tennant in the second season, and we'll see y'all next time. And that's over.